So let's do a quick recap. She's in the giant's cave. The giant collects dreams in jars. I think she's thinking she's in a dream. This is how much we've read so far. Are we halfway through? No. If we were halfway through, it'd be like about this much. Are we half of a halfway through? We're probably half of a halfway through. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 more days to read. We have to finish this book in 12 days. We better get going. 12 days. So this is called The Blood Bottler. The BFG by Roald Dahl. We forgot our grand entrance. Some days are like that. All right. Let's look at the board. Hey. All right. Hands are quiet. Toys are away. Minds are open. What will happen next? Suddenly, a tremendous thumping noise came from outside the cave entrance, and a voice like thunder shouted, "Runt! Is you in there? Runt! I is hearing you jabbling. Who is you jabbling to, Runt?" "Look out," cried the BFG. "It is the Blood Bottler." But before he had finished speaking, the stone was rolled aside, and the 50-foot giant, more than twice as tall and wide as the BFG, came striding into the cave. So Runt is the smallest. So some giant is calling the BFG the smallest. And he's so huge himself. He was, oh, I can't tell you that.
Just say it.
I can't tell you he was naked. Ew. I'm not telling you he was naked. I am not reading that part that he was naked except for a dirty little piece of cloth around his bottom.
Oh, you just read it. You just said it.
I'm not going to read the naked part. I'm skipping that part.
You already read it.
Shh, I'm reading. Sophie was on the tabletop, and the enormous partly eaten snooze-cumber was lying near her, and she ducked behind it. Oh yeah, remember they were eating that cucumber thing?
Ew, it's disgusting.
Oh. "I is jabbling to myself," the BFG answered. "Oh, Pifflefizz," shouted the Blood Bottler. "Bugs Wallop," he boomed. "You is talking to a human being. That is what I is thinking." "No, no, no," cried the BFG. "Yes, yes," cried the Blood Bottler. "I is guessing you has snitched away a human being and brought it back to your bung hole as a pet. So now I is winking it out and guzzling it as an extra snack before my supper." So remember he gave us that description? So here he is wearing his cloth on his lower bottom. I don't need to remind you a couple times. So that giant is way bigger. Yeah.
Why is the big front of the BFG so tiny? That's what I'm trying to do.
My thoughts exactly.
Oh my God.
My thoughts exactly. Isaiah, fix your body so you don't fall over. All right, so the poor BFG was nervous. "There's no one here," he stammered. Stammered is like, oh, almost like stuttering. "Well, why don't you leave me alone?" The Blood bottler pointed a finger as large as a tree trunk at the BFG. Runty. Little scummy, he shouted. Piffling little swiggle finger. I think these are bad words. I'm not sure. Squimby little bottle wart. Plenty little. Oh gosh, there's a whole bunch of them. I is now going to search the primroses. Primroses are flowers, but premises, that's a place. Search the premises. He's getting it confused. They talk all mixed up. It's hard for me to follow sometimes. I is now going to search. He grabbed the BFG by the arm, and you is going to help me do it. Us together is going to winkle out this tasteful little human being, he shouted. The BFG had intended to whisk Sophie off the table as soon as he got the chance to hide her behind his back, but now there was no hope of doing this. Sophie peered around the chewed-off end of the enormous snoozle comber, watching the two giants as they moved away down the cave. The blood bottler was a gruesome sight. His skin was reddish-brown. There was black hair sprouting on his chest and his arms and his stomach. The hair on his head was long and dark and tangled. His foul face was round and squishy looking. His eyes were tiny black holes, and the nose was small and flat. He just looks ugly. He just looks ugly.
You said a bad word this time.
I'm only reading what it says. I didn't mean to say a bad word if I said a bad word.
Ugly word?
Oh, ugly. Yeah. The U word, ugly. I have a story about bad words and kindergartners, but I won't share that now. It was not in the least difficult to believe that this ghastly brute ate men, women, children every night. The blood bottler, still holding the BFG by the arm, was examining the rows and the rows and the rows of the bottles. Your pimbly bottle, he shouted. What is you putting in them? Nothing that would interest you. So it sounds like this bully little monster giant who eats people doesn't even know what the BFG has on his shelf in those bottles. I wonder who else doesn't know. You is only interested in guzzling human beings, and you is a dotty as a dog waggler. Oh, more name calling. Soon the blood bottler would be coming back, Sophie told herself, and he was bound to catch and search the tabletop, but she couldn't possibly jump off the table. It was 12 feet high. She'd break a leg. The snooze comber, although it was as thick as the perambulator, was not going to hide her if the blood blotter picked it up. She examined the chewed off end. It had large seeds in the middle, each one as big as a melon. What do you think she's going to do? She's thinking of her next step. She's going to get caught if she stays there. She has to do something. She's looking at that big cucumber-like thing. That thing that tastes horrible. Tastes like frogs and pond water. What do you think she's going to do, Kennedy? What? What about it? She needs to do something to get away from the blood bottler. What could she do? Climb down it? Climb down it or climb... What do you think, Avery?
Go in it.
Go in it? Could you go in a stinky, swampy pond
That has frogs?
that tasted like frogs and gross, dirty mud?
Yeah, it's from the movie.
Oh, there's a movie.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
Why do I bother?
I've seen it 2 times.
Oh my goodness. Pretend you haven't seen it yet.
I've seen it. I've seen it 1,000 times.
So, note to self, I need to watch the movie. Is the book like the movie?
Yes. It's so good. It's a BFG movie.
All right, I got to check out the BFG movie, but what I'm thinking of is right now, so she hides inside it?
Yes.
Does she get away with it?
Yeah, the giant's about to eat her, but BFG saves her. Yeah.
Okay, let's see what happens. She examined the chewed off end. They embodied the soft, slimy stuff, taking care to stay out of sight. Sophie reached forward and scooped away a half a dozen of these seeds. This left a hole in the middle, you were right, of the snooze comber, large enough for her to crouch in. So long as she rolled herself up into a ball, she crawled into it. It was wet and slimy. It was gross, but what did that matter if it was going to save her from being eaten? The blood bottler and the BFG were coming back towards the table now. The BFG was nearly fainting with fear. Any moment, he was telling himself, Sophie would be discovered and eaten. Any moment. Suddenly, the blood bottler grabbed the half-eaten snooze comber. The BFG stared at the bare table. Sophie, where are you? He thought desperately. You cannot possibly be jumping off that high table. So where you is hiding? My God, I need a blood bottler. I mean, I need a snooze comber. So this is the filthy, rotten glubbage you is eating. Boom, the blood bottler holding up the partly eating snooze comber. You must be cuckles to be guzzling this rubbish squash. For a moment, the blood bottler seemed to have forgotten about his search for Sophie. The BFG decided to lead him further off the track. That is the scrumdiddly-ishous snooze comber, he said. I is guzzling it gleefully every night and day. It is you never tried one, blood bottler? Human beings is juicier, the blood bottler said. You is tucking rummy tot, said the BFG, growing braver by the second. He was thinking that if only he could get the blood bottler to take one bite. Oh, no way. So she's hiding in it, and now he's hoping that the blood bottler will bite it. Don't even go there, no. Where was I? I is happy to let you sample it. But please, when you see how truly glumptious it is, do not be guzzling the whole thing. Leave me a little snitch it for my supper. The blood bottler stared suspiciously with a small piggy eyes at the snooze comber. Sophie, crouching inside the chewed off end, began to tremble all over. You is not switch fiddling me, is you? What does switch fiddling mean?
That's what it means.
Like tricking. You're not tricking me, are you? You're not fooling me, are you? You're not lying to me, are you? Never, cried the BFG passionately. Take a bite, and I am positive you will be shouting out, oh, how scrumptious, how wondervig it is. The BFG would see the greedy blood bottler's mouth beginning to water. Starting to drool here. More than ever at the prospect of extra food. Vegetables is very good for you, he went on. It is not the whole health some always be eating meaty things. Just this once, the blood bottler said, I is going to taste these rotten some eats of yours. But I is warning you that if it is filthsome, I is smashing it over your sludgy little head. He picked up the snooze comber. He began rising it in its long journey to his mouth, some 50 feet up in the air. Sophie wanted to scream, don't, but that would have been even more certain of a death. Crouching among the slimy seeds, she felt herself being lifted up to death. Up, up, up. Suddenly there was a crunch as the blood bottler bit a hunk off the end. Sophie saw his yellow teeth clamping together a few inches from her head. Then there was utter darkness. She was in his mouth. She caught a whiff of his evil-smelling breath. It stank of bad meat. She waited for the teeth to go crunch once more. She hoped she would be killed quickly. Ew! Eggblast! And he spat it out quickly. All of these great lumps of snoozle that were in his mouth, as well as Sophie herself, went shooting out across the cave. If Sophie had struck the stony wall of the cave, she would most certainly have been killed. Instead, she hit the soft folds of the BFG's black cloak hanging against the wall. Thump! She dropped to the ground, half stunned. She crawled under the hem of the cloak, and there she crouched. You little swine bugler, roared the blood bottler. You little pig swiller, again with the name calling.
Why is there always a name calling?
I don't know, yeah. He rushed at the BFG and smashed what was left of the snooze comber over his head. Boink! Fragments of the filthy vegetable splashed all over the cave. You is not loving it? He asked innocently, rubbing his head. Loving it? That is the most disastrous thing I have ever touched my teeth. You must be boogles to swallowing up sludge like that. Every night you could be galloping off happy as a hamburger and gobbling up juicy human beings. Eating human beings is wrong and evil, said the BFG. It is guzzling and glumptuous, shouted the blood bottler. And tonight I is galloping off to Chile to swabble up some human chili beans. Is you wishing to know why I chose Chile? I is not wishing to know anything, said the BFG. I is choosing Chile because I is fed up with the taste of Eskimos. It is important I has plenty of cold eats in the scuddly hot weather, and the next coldest thing to the Eskimos is a chili bean. Human beans from Chile is very chilly. Does that even make sense? Not really. But maybe for a giant with less intelligence than humans, it makes the best sense. They're so big, they're dumb. I mean, they're so big, they're not smart. They're Stop. Stop ratting me out.
Yeah.
I'm just reading the book. I'm just reading what Roald Dahl, the famous author, wrote. Horrible, the BFG said. You ought to be ashamed. All other giants is saying they want to gallop off to England tonight to guzzle the school childers. I is very fond indeed of the English school childers. They has nice inky booky flavor. Ferris, still reading here. Thanks. Sorry. Perhaps I will change my mind and go to England with them. You is disgusting, the BFG said. And you is an insult to the giants, people, shouted the blood bottler. You is not fit to be a giant. You is a squanky little squiddler. And you is a pibbling little pipsqueak. You is a cream puff nut. Ooh, cream puffs. Oh. With that, the horrible blood-bottling giant strode out of the cave. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. The BFG ran to the cave entrance and quickly rolled the stone back into place. Sophie, Sophie, he whispered. Sophie, where is you? Sophie emerged from under the hem of the black cloak. I am here. I could picture it in the movie. I am here. Donnie. She's okay. She's okay. The BFG picked her up and held her tenderly in the palm of his hand. Oh, I is so happy to be finding you all in one lump. I was in his mouth, Sophie said. You was what? Cried the BFG. Sophie told him what had happened. And there I was telling him to eat the filthsome snizzle comber. And you was there all the time inside it. Not much fun, Sophie said. Just look at you, poor little childer, cried the BFG. You was all covered in snoozlecomber and giant spit. Ew. He set about cleaning her up as best he could. I is hating those other giants more than ever now. You know what I should like? What? I should like to find a way of disappearing them. Every single one. So the big friendly giant, the BFG, actually has a heart for the human children's. And he wants to get rid of all the giants. I don't know. That's like a big thing, right? Do you think he could do it? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you think he could do it? Oh, you guys have seen the movie. Yes. Frog, Scopple, and Whiz Boppers. This is like really hard to read. They're all made up words. All right. Bumpity bump bump. We will find out next time if he can. Or what's the next step.